Heyo, welcome everyone to Today in the Scene by Indie Arcade Wave. I'm Joe, your host, and here on In the Scene, we dive into what's happening in the arcade space, from new arcade developers, arcade owners, and just operators, and just news in the space in general. I've been with Galactic Battleground for over 5 years now. We've been showing it off at conventions all over the country. We're in arcades all over the country as well. Our next convention is going to be Combo Breakers in Chicago, or just outside of Chicago. But we recently just went to Midwest Gaming Classic, and I got to meet Steve, who actually had found the podcast a couple years ago. We've been talking back and forth. I knew he was making a game, but I didn't see too much about it. He brought it out to Midwest Gaming Classic, and it was awesome. The game is called Psychic Space Wars, and I'm gonna bring Steve in now so that he can talk about this game, how he made it, and everything like that. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I'm really excited to talk to someone who was a fan of the show and was developing a game at the same time, continued to develop, and then I found out about the game much later. It was great to meet you in Milwaukee. I know you're kind of in that area. It wasn't too far of a drive for you. But I'm ready to just jump in and kind of learn about your game. So first off, just introduce yourself. Who is Steve? What do you do?
So my name's Steve. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I work in aerospace, and then also I just have a lot of random hobbies, and game development kind of became one of them. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, simple. I didn't know that you were an engineer. That's pretty cool, and it makes a ton of sense as to this is one of your hobbies. I can see the 3D printer in the background, so
Yep,
obviously
yep.
you enjoy building things, right? Making things out of nothing. So let's just talk about what was it like. Obviously, being an engineer, doing tactile things, building things
Yep.
is definitely interesting. But what made you want to develop a game? Which I mean, I guess the arcade cabinet is a physical place for the game, but what really made you dive into game development?
Sure. So I mean, like, I'm born in 1991, so I grew up playing video games all the time, and I'm in the school system I was in, we did not learn software development at all. So it was definitely just more your basics, of like English and stuff like that. So gaming was always a black box. I had no idea how games were made. It was just magic to me. But once I kind of got through college, I attempted to make games because I just thought it sounded really fun. But I could never really get very far in the development process. And I just kind of, whatever games I would sort of demos I would make felt like less good versions of games that already existed. So then as I started working and kind of developing more skills in my engineering sense, I kind of thought like if I could bring my own skills to the world of video games, maybe I could like make something that's kind of different and not like a less good version of something that existed and something that's truly original. So I kind of use that logic of let's make a physical thing that interacts with video games that's just different, and then we'll make a game around that. So that was kind of the idea.
Yeah, there's a lot about your game to me that stands out. That's original. I mean, like you said, like it's different from anything else in the space. I don't know of really any like dedicated arcade games that are motion sensors. Like I think
Mhm.
there's the one I'm thinking of maybe in New York called Hair Na or something like that. I don't remember how that one works exactly, but
Yep, I
I know
played that
that
when I was at Magfest. It's
I
that's cool.
yeah, I know that one's like the whole idea is like no touching, right? So
Yep.
definitely an interesting concept, but let's just talk about the development side first. Then we'll talk about controls afterwards. So how did you develop Psychic Space Wars? Like what
Yep.
software did you use? And because you're not a coder, right? So
No.
you're using something that's like really anybody could step up, download the software and build a game. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I developed it in Stencil. It's like Stencyle. It's a development software that I think they released it in like 2014, maybe. And I dabbled in it like way back in the day. But the nice thing about Stencil is it's not, you don't have to know how to code. It's all block based. So you sort of drag and drop blocks into like, you know, um, I guess we'll say like a series of code. And then you can, if you need like an if statement, you literally drag the if block to it. So you don't have to know syntax or anything like that. You just need to come up with the logic of how you want the game to run. And that's kind of it. There's a little bit more to it. Like once you start getting into it, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but there's plenty of tutorials online for it. I thought it was super intuitive and pretty user friendly overall.
Yeah, I think having a software like that that's incredibly intuitive is incredibly important for people that want to break into this space. The arcade space is different. You know, it's a lot of classic retro stuff is primarily what you're seeing, but
Mhm.
the indie space is growing continuously. I mean, you're just another game to add to the list. You know, there's got to be like 20 or 30 games now. I'm not even counting Wonderville because they have so many like one-off games
Yeah.
that could turn into more. And I know what Kung Fu Kickball is in production now, so that's another Wonderville game that's going to be moving to other parts of the country. But I find that really cool that you found a software that, and you were you familiar with it back in like 2014, 2015?
Yeah, that was what I dabbled with when I tried to make games beforehand. So
Okay,
yeah, that was kind of my primer for this.
okay, so you were already kind of aware of it.
Mhm.
It was interesting when we were in Milwaukee and we were talking to like Kelly and Brian, other
Mhm.
developers for the space. Like they had never even heard of it.
Yeah.
They work primarily in Unity, so having a software like that that is now on our radar allows a lot more people to get into the space, which I think is awesome and unique. Speaking of unique, let's talk about the controls.
Sure.
I'm gonna have gameplay playing while we're talking about your game, Psychic Space Wars, so that people can see what the game looks like. But I feel like you really need to know what the controls are to understand how the game plays. So tell us a little bit about how you built the controls.
Sure. So the controls are really just two distance sensors that just measure the distance of your hands. So you basically take both of your hands and put them over the sensors, and you can move them up and down. And that correlates to something happening on the screen. So you're basically a ship scrolling across the screen. Your left hand moves up and down, and the ship will move to that location of your hand. And then your right hand moves up and down, and that rotates your ship to aim. And it's just automatically shooting. So you're just scrolling across the screen, shooting at stuff by just guiding it through a stage and aiming at stuff. That was the simple concept, and then when it came to the design level of like the stages and everything, then it was just adding more and more fun stuff to it, like obstacles and different types of enemies and things like that. Um, to elaborate a little bit more, sorry, as I'm thinking about it, it does use an Arduino,
Okay.
which if anyone's interested in doing any type of controls that are different from like buttons and keyboards and stuff like that, there's something called an Arduino Leonardo, and I think it's also an Arduino Micro. I want to say is the smaller version of it,
Yeah, I think we
but
use the micros.
yes, and it can mimic like an Xbox controller. So you can get any type of sensor you want. So if you can think of like anything from like a force sensor to a light sensor, whatever you want to do, and plug that into an Arduino and have it mimic an analog stick. So you can use almost anything you can think of as a controller.
Yeah, I thought that was like the one thing that really made your game stand out was that you had such a unique control. And I honestly like I'm skeptical of like the motion sensing stuff, but your
Mhm.
controls were really tight. Like exactly what I did, like if I went up, like the ship went up to the exact point, and the second I stopped moving my hand, it stopped.
Dude,
And
and
aiming with the other hand was super easy too.
it took a lot of iteration to get it that smooth. You should have
Yeah,
seen the first time I did it. Like I was so excited to do it, and I got this like clunky code in there, and it would just like eke up to like the location of my hand and like this really jerky sensation. But I was like so hyped that it worked that like I just like kept going because it was like super fun. But like it was really rough.
you had proof of concept, and that's so exciting because you it's I feel like you have to make a game to like really understand this. And I'm not even a coder or an artist or anything, just like being part of the development and creation process, like going from an idea in your head to having it physically in front of you is so satisfying. No matter how clunky it is, no matter how
Oh yeah.
unpolished it is, like it's just cool to be like, I made it. It's working. We have proof of concept. Let's polish this out. And that's exactly I feel like that's where you are right now. Like I feel like the game is already pretty polished, the controls are already polished. You've built your demo cabinet,
Yeah.
and there's probably going to be an iteration of that in the future. So let's talk a little bit about cabinet design. Like while you have these incredibly unique controls and this game idea, like how did you say I'm going to build the cabinet like this, and what features did you put in the cabinet to make it, I mean, easy to move or easy to demo?
So yeah. It took a lot of iteration. So I actually had a cabinet before this that was like super unsafe to like bring anywhere because it would like topple over and stuff. Um, but the initial concept for the game, I wasn't planning on making an arcade game. I wanted it to be something I would just 3D print and share online, and other people could like download it and make it themselves and play it on their computers. But once I got the concept, an arcade cabinet made sense. So I basically I'm pretty savvy in CAD, so like I know how to design stuff in 3D. I just designed a concept of this cabinet to fit in my car. So I literally sized it to fit in the car, and that was just kind of it. So I dabble in woodworking. I'm not a great woodworker, but it was enough to be able to do this. And yeah, just 3D printed a template for the cabinet contours, and I just used a router bit to basically follow that contour. So it was like several different pieces that sort of fit into like a puzzle to like create like a pattern that goes on the wood, and then I just followed that pattern, and that allowed me to cut the frame out, and then everything else I just kind of screwed together. Craig jigs are your friend, so use those Craig screws where they can go in at an angle, and it makes it really easy to put it together. Watch some tutorials online. Just there are tons of people online make cabinets all the time for like MAME stuff. So just see what they're doing and try to do something similar, and then try to make it easy. Like make it cheap, make it easy. I just did like a plexiglass from like Menards, cut it down with a circular saw, and then I just put tape in like the width of the screen so it like covered it up and spray painted the back of it, and that just made like the bezel look black, but it's literally just painted on acrylic. And then I took the tape off, and then the screen just fit perfectly in the center of that. So there's just a lot of like weird little hacks. For the marquee, just went to Office Max and had them print a marquee for me. Um, for if you need help designing some of the art, because I cannot do cabinet art. I can do pixel art, but I cannot do cabinet art. For the marquee, I just used Fiverr, and had someone from Venezuela just make me a marquee for it. So a lot of like just when you the fun thing about it is there's so many little problems to solve. You just find little solutions for each thing. It can be almost overwhelming altogether, but when you look at it like one at a time, it's just kind of fun to like go through and figure each of these things out. It's like, okay, today I'm looking at marquees. Okay, today I'm looking at the bezel. Today I'm looking at the controls, or I'm looking at pixel art. So you just pick out whatever you want to solve for the day, and that kind of becomes the project.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you said it so well. Like it's just it's basically an adult puzzle with no
Mhm.
instructions.
Exactly.
And you have to go and find the instructions little by little. Like YouTube is such a great source. I mean, I've interviewed plenty of developers and arcade owners and stuff. So like, if you're interested in this space at all, like, there's probably a resource that is easy to reach. I mean, most of the people that I
Mhm.
have on the show are like just cold calls. If you just say, hey, especially Mark, like Mark in at Wonderville, if you're looking to
Mhm.
make a game, like just shoot him a message. He'll probably help you. Like everybody that I've talked to in the space knows who Mark is, and they're like, yeah, he told me how to do this or that. So there's tons of resources to do this stuff, and it's really cool seeing more people do it. I was really excited to finally see the game after all this time. What did you think of MGC? I know you weren't there a ton. You had some other stuff going on, but the time that you were there, what did you think about the indie space and just the convention as a whole?
It was pretty wild. I mean, there's so much to see. And unfortunately, like I was only there for probably like maybe like 5 or 6 hours, like which was a bummer. But man, I had such a fun time meeting everybody, and getting to talk to other people that are in the space and building it. Like I talked to um uh, oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. The guy next to me, who was doing
Tony from Deathball.
thank you, Tony from
Yeah.
Deathball. I was gonna say Wizard Duel, and I'm like, no, Deathball. Yeah, no. So I got to chat with him quite a bit and just kind of understand what he's going through, because they're like selling cabinets, so that's
Yep.
like a step beyond where I even can imagine being. So I'm just trying to understand how you even get into that space, and is that a space I even want to get into? So it was really cool to see all those people. Also, just all the other games I got to play. Ice Cold Beer was like my favorite thing I've ever played.
So much
Like
fun.
that was so cool. Um, the pinball machines, they had so many retro pinball machines, that was wild. They had a wrestling ring, so I got to watch some wrestling. That was fun. Tons of merch stores. Tabletop. If you're into tabletop, there was a ton of stuff on the bottom floor. So like just something for everybody. Almost overwhelming for me just being there for a few hours, but it was wild.
Yeah, it's a really cool show, and it was really interesting to me the group that we had. Dan from DSM unfortunately wasn't in our booth. He probably will be next
Mhm.
time, but
Yeah, I
we
chatted
were
with Dan for a bit.
yeah, awesome guy. He's
Yeah,
been on the
he's a
show
cool
like
guy.
5 times now, probably. We just we had so many different people in so many different stages. Like he's got two polished games and a brand new game, right? He was showing off a
Yeah.
new game, and then we were in there with a polished game of 4 or 5 years, and then a brand new game, and then you had Highlight Heroes who were there, and they're about their first year and a half here, and they're showing it off, trying to get it out to more people. And Tony, like you just said, Tony
Mhm.
was in there, polished game, and then your game came in there, and it's like the game is it's done. I mean, it's a functional game, it's demoable, and you got to like come in and kind of soak in all this information from us to make your next steps easier. Um, and I feel like you're well on your way to having a game that could go into an arcade. I even found an arcade owner that is interested in purchasing one if you're interested in moving forward with it. Um, what do you think your next steps are? Like what are you planning from here on out with the game?
So next step for me is probably going to be to try to go for a production build, like something that is like actually like sellable. From there, it's probably going to be research onto the business aspect of this. Like, do you do like an LLC? Do you do like a, I don't know, sole proprietorship, that kind of stuff? Like, how do you want to handle it? Like starting a business. Um, Also, like, in terms of build, when it comes to that production, that's probably the biggest step of like all the components that need to go into it. What type of screen are you going to use? Like, what type, like, how are you going to do like a marquee that doesn't look like you just hacked it together? So it's going to be interesting, kind of going from that jump of like me just trying to make something that works in my garage for cheap to like something that I could actually sell. So it's going to be a lot of research probably in the immediate future.
Yeah, research is good. I mean, it's a good thing to do. I know that we're going through it right now. We're producing 5 GBGs, and we're like, which screens should we use because the ones we used on the last models aren't available anymore. And so it's finding all
Mhm.
the little components. Paradise Arcade Shop is the place for Arduinos and wiring harnesses, and your controllers are pretty unique, so that might be kind of a proprietary thing that you're gonna have to build out. But there are plenty of people that are manufacturing cabinets, and we've got resources. So when you get to that step, I'm more than happy to connect you with people and kind of keep that moving. Yeah, I guess the last question I had for you is what advice would you give to someone who is interested in creating a game kind of in a similar situation to what you were? What would you say to them to kind of help them get over the initial hurdle of, holy shit, like this is a huge project to take on?
Um, I would say, I guess two things. First is just to start, just try it. I failed at probably making 4 games before I made this one. But all of those failures, like I just learned a ton, and it made it easier to build the next one, the next one. So just start. Would be the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice would be to look at a skill that you have that maybe like no one else has. Like maybe like a, call it like your superpower or something like that. Think about what you're really good at and hone in on that. If you're trying to get a unique concept, if you're a really good artist, hone in on the art, make the art look pop. If you can't do any of that stuff and you're a mechanical engineer, make a weird controller. So just use whatever skills that you think you have and use it as an edge to make your game different.
I love that. Lean into what you're good at and then build from
Mhm.
there. Cause I mean that's where it starts. You gotta start somewhere. You just gotta kick that snowball down the hill so that it starts rolling.
Mhm.
Once you get momentum, it becomes so much easier because, like you were saying earlier, it's today's the marquee, today's the controller, today's this.
Yep.
Like you just start parting it out, and all of a sudden you have a whole cabinet. Do you have any social medias or anything that you're sharing this stuff on that people could follow you on?
I need to do that. I'm pretty terrible. I made a link tree for just a couple of things, so I'll give it to you, and I'll maybe
Okay.
if we want to put it in the description or something like that. And then maybe I'll start updating that link tree to have other things as I make them.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you're gonna send me some stuff for editing, and I'll post some of
Yep.
that stuff up too, so anybody that's interested can continue to look at it. that's really all I've got for you, Steve. I just want to say thank you for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you reaching out to Dan at MGC and just being like, hey, I kind of want to bring my game, and it working out, and getting to hang out was really cool. For anybody that's still watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It'll help the wave grow. We can all ride it together. We've got the 4-player Konami cabinet available for sale, as well as the 4-player tabletop and T-shirts. All that stuff is on galacticbattleground.com/store.
Oops.
Steve's rocking the T-shirt right now. And I just want to say thank you for checking it out. Until next time, peace.